Okay, welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry it's been such a long time that I've made a video. The reason I'm doing this video is because a couple of people on a group on social media I follow for Nikko cars have asked me to put something together because I'm doing a bit of a project on this particular car. It's not a Tamiya for a change on my channel. This is quite an interesting car. It's there's a bit of history behind it, and we'll go over that. But essentially, this is a bit of a Resto-Mod build that I'm doing on this car. And as I said, a couple of people who've got similar cars, thinking of doing similar things, are interested in how I did it. So I'll take everyone through the steps I've gone through. Firstly, the car. Now, weirdly, this box, as you can see, it says Stealth on it. I don't really understand the history of this car. This is actually called a Nikko Dictator. And this is an interesting car because if you know Nikko models, they tend to be what we in the hobby would class as toy grade cars. So they made with sort of much cheaper components, designed for children, quite robust, quite limited performance, so they're easy to drive, and they don't have the proportional drive systems that the hobby grade cars do. You know, they don't have the fine, delicate controls. Or the adjustability of a hobby grade car. They just tend to be put your AA batteries in and off you go. Nikko were very good at this. They made some really robust cars. In fact, my first ever remote control car was a Nikko. It was called the Chariot 2, and I absolutely loved it. I was probably about 8 years old when I got it, and I just thought it was the business. Right up to the point until my friend got a Tamiya Super Hornet, I think it was, or a Grasshopper or something, and I suddenly realised that I wanted a big hobby grade car. Anyway, this is interesting. So Nikko, like I said, do toy grade cars. They did dabble with hobby grade cars. There were two, to my knowledge, that they made. One was called the Dandy Dash, and they did a hopped up version of that called the Super Sprint, which I did actually own, and I regrettably sold many years ago, and I wish I'd kept it because they're very rare now and they're very interesting. This is a sort of halfway house. It's an interesting car. So it's a 1/10 scale, like a hobby grade. It looks a bit like a hobby grade. It's got sort of Tamiya boomerang-ish sort of look to it, cross between a boomerang, a grasshopper, and maybe a thundershot. So it's 1/10 scale, and they made it 4-wheel drive to compete with some of the Tamiya cars. They were cheaper than the Tamiya models, and it came pre-built, fully proportional control system, which again is a bit of a rich statement because it's not. And it had a 4-wheel drive system, and the 4-wheel drive system itself is quite interesting. So it's like a ready to run, almost hobby grade car, running on a hobby grade 7.2 volt battery, and quite quick for all its, for all intents and purposes, quite a quick car. But probably not quite up there with the Tamiyas and the Kyosho's and the Schumachers and all the other jazz that were racing at the time. But yeah, very interesting car. Now, I picked this one up very, very cheaply. £35 I paid for it. And it's immaculate. As a box will tell you, it's red, it's not white, and it's not called Stealth, it's called Dictator. So I've no idea. There's a Dictator on the box as well. I don't know why they've put Stealth on there. Who knows? And the car itself, unfortunately, I've dismantled half of it because I wasn't planning to make this video, but I'll put some pictures up of it now. Absolutely immaculate. It looked like it had barely been played with, barely a scratch on it, not a broken piece in sight, not a speck of dirt on it, just a bit of dust. Wonderful. Got all its manuals, got all its crib sheets, even got the little ribbon to go on the aerial of your transmitter to tell you that it's green band 5, 27 megahertz. So a really lovely car. Got it out of the box and put a battery in it, powered it up. Everything worked apart from the drive. It had no drive, so the motors were running, and but it had no drive. And it turned out the pinions, I say pinions plural, come on to that, had detached themselves from the motor shaft. Now, I could have just repaired those, but it gave me sort of a green light to actually go ahead and Resto-Mod this. So the plan was to make this car look as completely standard as it is here, but to have modified running gear, and we'll go over what I've done because there's been a little bit of modification but not too much. So there we go, that's the car itself. We'll have a look at the car because it's interesting. And then we'll go into the actual modification. The car itself, so I said it was sort of a halfway house between a full hobby grade and a toy. It's got an interesting four-wheel drive system. So this actually has a twin motor setup. So it has a motor for each axle. So it has one driving the rear and one driving the front axle via a sort of fairly basic gearbox and differentials. So quite an interesting system. And then you have an electronic control. Now allegedly it claims to have a torque splitting system on the electronics. I don't think it does. I just think it has individual control of the front and rear axle power wise. I don't think it senses traction or anything like that. I'm not aware of it. Now, there's reasons they did that. If we take a car such as this, which I have here. So this is a Tamiya, this is a Terra Scorcher. And this is the one that I've restored in my in a previous video, if you're interested in seeing this car. This is an original 1989 Terra Scorcher, just so you can see it. Now this car has a very bespoke four-wheel drive system. It's shaft driven, and it has different gearboxes in the front and rear, and they are interconnected with a shaft. Now that is expensive to develop, and that puts the price of the model up immediately. Now if you, like Tamiya, you were going to use this drivetrain in other models, it makes sense for you to produce or develop a gearbox system and a four-wheel drive system because it's going to be used in other models, so it makes more financial sense. Now with Nikko, they weren't ever planning to have this drive system, I don't think, in any other car. So really for them to develop a very complex four-wheel drive system like this one, with separate mouldings for front and rear, didn't make a lot of sense. So they very cleverly decided to use the same gearbox, the same pretty much everything, suspension gearbox, aside from the steering knuckles. We've got the front gearbox here. They're sort of mirror image of each other, so that makes the production much cheaper, much more straightforward. You don't need lots of different moulds to put stuff together. So clever design, and kept the cost down, I believe. The power source for this is two rather than 540 type motors, which you'd get in the Tamiya like we just looked at. They're 380 type motors. So this, anyone familiar with a Grasshopper or a holiday buggy from Tamiya or a couple of the other earlier models, they run these 380 type motors. Massively underrated motor this. They really sing their little heart out, these motors, and they do go well. Even the standard 380 goes well. And people are very quick to remove them from the Tamiyas and stuff and chuck them in the bin and put a 540 in these cars, which I think overwhelms them. Certainly with something like a Tamiya Grasshopper, they will really struggle with put the power down with a 540. These things rev a lot harder. Less torque, but quite revvy little motors. They're good little things. This Dictator has two of them, one for each axle, as I said. So yeah, interesting drivetrain on this thing. So let's get into the actual build. As you can see, I've already dismantled it. A couple of little tips for you first. If you're going to delve into this, now I don't want to teach people to suck eggs. Some of you probably know all this already. Some of you don't. Two tips. If you're going to work with Japanese models, particularly older Japanese models, Tamiyas, or these Nikkos from the 80s. So my first tip is, and you can thank me for this later, is if you are working on those cars, get yourself some JIS screwdrivers. These are Japanese industry standard or industrial standard screwdrivers. The two you need is a PH2 by 100 and a PH1 by 75. If you buy a set, cheap set online, you can't go wrong. You just want the Phillips or Phillips head, but to JIS specification. All these screws on all these Japanese cars, Tamiya to this day still use them, use these screwdrivers. If you use a regular Phillips head, you will just end up rounding bolts off, you know, and they won't grip in there, and you can actually see the play in that because they don't fit. They will probably do the job, but you probably end up damaging the screw heads. And on something like a Tamiya, it's not so bad. You can just buy a bag of self-tapping Tamiya screws, and no problem, that's fine. But with these things, and you want to protect all these very quite hard to come by screws, get yourself a set of these. Promise a cheap set for about £10, $15, whatever. This is actually my favourite one. I've got two, but I prefer this one. I just prefer the shape of the handle. My other tip with screws, just before we get going, is the finger tight rule. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but with these models, I've restored loads and loads and loads and loads of old cars, and the one thing I see all the time is cracked plastic. Now, the plastic does age, that's a given, but one thing that doesn't help is overstressing plastic by over tightening screws. And I was taught by an engineer many years ago. He worked on these a lot. He was a mechanical engineer, but he loved these cars, model cars, and he always taught me the fingertip tight technique, which is where you screw it up with the tips of your fingers on the very end of the screwdriver, and you nip it up with maybe just 2 fingers, okay? And that's about 1/8 of a turn there, no more. Don't over tighten stuff on these cars, they don't need it. Remember, they're 10 times smaller than a real thing. And this FT rule, well, I won't tell you what FT means in case kids are listening to this, just nip them up very lightly with the tips of your fingers. You can thank me later for that one as well, when you don't crack all your suspension components. It's very, very common for these to crack because A, age, B, poor maintenance, i.e. letting grit get into them, and C, the bit that everyone forgets is stressing the plastic because you've over tightened them. Just a couple of tips. Now, the other thing to remember is when you're taking these things apart, particularly a car like this, is if you're not fortunate enough to have a structure manual, again with Tamiya cars, you can find them online. Rare stuff like this, it's much harder. Now, I'm very lucky because I'm going to knock the camera. I actually got this amazing crib sheet with mine, which gives you an exploded view of the car. It details all the parts. And on the other side, it tells you the number corresponds with the part, so we know exactly which screw goes where and the lengths of the screws. Common lengths, a 3x10mm and a 3x8mm, but make sure you put them in the right one. Don't put a 10mm screw in an 8mm hole, because you will overstress and crack the plastic. So my final tip with regards to that, if you haven't got the instructions and you're not used to working on these, get yourself a set of these cheap digital calipers, and you can measure the screws, and I'll just show you that very quickly. We'll take that one out I've just put in. We just whiz this out. And how you measure these, obviously zero your caliper first. Use this top one, which is the reverse of the bottom. The one you want to measure, we'll do that again, is from the screw head, it's very hard to do this on camera, to the tip of the screw, okay? Now if I measure this one, we know it's actually roughly 9.89, so we know that's a 10mm screw, 3mm thick if you want to measure that. 2.83, I've not measured it quite right, but that's a 3x10. That's how you measure screws, okay? Don't measure it from the head, so don't measure it from the top of the head, measure it from where the thread starts, and that'll tell you how long the screw is, okay? Don't mismeasure them, because you might measure a 10mm or an 8mm thinking it's a 6mm, or a 10mm thinking it's an 8mm, or you know, an 8mm thinking it's a 10mm, because you've measured the head as well, which is 2 or 3 mils long. So just nip that out finger tight. Those are my tips, okay? Boring bit over. Let's get into this build. Okay, I've switched to shaky hand mode, so apologies if it's a bit wobbly, this filming. So, as I said, I'd already taken the car apart before people asked me to do this video, so apologies it's in this half-built state. Let me take you through what I've done so far. Let's start at the rear end. So this gearbox, we'll have a look at the front gearbox, it's exactly the same, and I will take that one apart. Now I've actually put this one back together, and as you can see there, we now have a Tamiya Type 380 sports tuned motor. So this is a 380 type motor. What is it? The RS 380SH, I think it's called, is the official term. This is a sports tuned one. Now these are cracking little motors. They really go like hell, and I've modified my Tamiya Grasshopper to run with these, because I always think a Grasshopper should have a 380 motor and not 540. I think the 540 motor is too much for a Grasshopper suspension, so I went with a 380, and when I actually fitted it, I realised it actually performs, this sports tuned actually performs just as well as the 540. What you end up with is higher revs and lower torque, which really suits the Grasshopper. It doesn't compromise grip. Obviously we're not going to fit a 540 in here, this is a snug fit. It's exactly the same size as the standard silver can 380 that we looked at a minute ago. And it's gone in, but obviously I needed a pinion, and we'll have a look at the pinion later because a lot of people have asked me about the pinion as well. I'll show you what I've used. I haven't got one to put in the front gearbox here because it's on order. I had to get it from Japan, and I'm in the UK and it takes a while for that to arrive, so it's on its way. This one I actually did manage to find in Hong Kong, and for whatever reason it's got through customs much quicker and it arrived much sooner. The wiring's done. We'll take the cover off, this protective cover that Nikko put on these cars, so they didn't want people fiddling with them as such. We'll take all that off and I'll show you what I've done inside. And then the gearbox at the back, this has been completely rebuilt, and I will rebuild the front one on the video so you can see what I've done. And it's been ball raced, okay? So I know it looks like a plastic bearing there. Actually behind this bushing, this is a plastic bush, there is a metal bearing, and I'll talk you through the bearings you need for this car. They're very easy, they're very cheap, they're very easy to get hold of. There's just standard 1150 type bearings, and I'll explain what those are in a moment. Right, let me whip this cover off. I'll do it magically, so you don't have to watch me unscrew all the screws that have already been put in, and I'll talk you through the electronics that I've put in and how I've made those work. Okay, so this is the cover removed, and let me talk you through this. So there's reasons for why I've done these things, and the first one, okay, is I have a bit of an issue with this obsession with power that people seem to have with RC models. It's probably the main reason I really don't like many modern RC cars, with the possible exception of Tamiya and maybe Kyosho. Every manufacturer seems obsessed with making them go as fast as goddamn possible and making sure that they run the highest performance lithium batteries, ridiculous 6C batteries and all this crap, brushless motors and stuff. Now there is a place for that, and I accept that, and if you're racing cars and stuff, brushless setups are fantastic. You know, they're very efficient, they're very powerful, and you can, you know, they're very accessible these days, as are lithium batteries. This, I don't want any of that. I want it to be run on the standard size motor, which is a 380. I don't want it to be brushless or anything like that. All I want is that sports tuned. And I don't want any fancy lithium batteries. It will just be run on a standard 7.2 volt, probably a NiMi. Now, before we get into electronics, there's another reason why you don't want to overpower a car like this. If you've got one and you want to sling brushless motors in it and put special wheels on it and upgrade the suspension, all this stuff, great, go nuts, it's your car. The reason I don't is because what you have to remember is, in here there are 40-year-old plastic gears, and the whole car is made of 40-year-old plastic. Now this one's in exceptional condition and probably more robust than most. But once you start upping the power on cars, especially cars of this age, you just end up breaking everything, and it's just a complete nonsense trying to do it to a car like this. I would advise you don't bother, because it really isn't worth it. You're just going to end up breaking them, and you try and find the parts for one of these. They are getting very scarce, they're getting very hard to find. If you want a really fast car, go out and buy a new one. Go and buy something cheap, you know, Chinese and cheap, or something like an Armour or a Traxxas, and go and thrash the living crap out of it. But I wouldn't bother with something like this. You're just going to end up getting annoyed every time you break it, and then even more annoyed when you can't find the parts. Now, a lot of you might think I'm insane putting this very old ACOMS 27 megahertz battery eliminator circuit, you know, the go-to receiver from the back in the day when I had these cars in the day. This was the one that came with all the kits. If you bought a kit with a radio gear, you'd get this, probably this receiver, and probably one of the standard ACOMS controls, you know, transmitters. The reason I put this in is because I know they're not as reliable as 2.4 gigahertz. I know you can't see it and all this sort of jazz. The reason is, and it's stupid, it's because I really love the original controller this came with. I love its little band for you to wear. I love its like angled aerial, and actually it's just a really nice controller. It's a really nice handset, really nice transmitter, and it will just look great on the shelf with this car, which is where this car is going to spend a lot of its time. So that's the reason I'm doing it. And this ACOMS works band 5, it picks it up, it works fine, and everything is controlled lovely by the original control. Yeah, I could connect it up to my FlySky GT5 2.4 gigahertz system and have it set up on there, and I could just pick that up and run it. I'm not going to run this car much, and I want it to look good, and I want it to be as original as possible, looking as original as possible, should I say. Then we've got this rather cheapo ESC that I don't know where it came from. It probably came with a car that I bought second hand or something. It works, it's fine, it's not fancy, it doesn't even have a braking system by the looks of things. I'm not that bothered, and it's certainly better than the system that was on this car, which wasn't really that good digital proportional performance. It had like fast or slow, and that was it. So I fitted that. That has been fitted in. It is at a very slight angle. I know people might find that annoying. It's just so it sits in there nicely. One thing I have done is I've had to cut away this section here, which is where the receiver crystal used to go in here, and it was raised and it just took up too much space. I've put this in the middle just for convenience. These wires will get tidied up eventually. And we have wires for the motor at the front, and we have wires to the motor at the back. Now underneath this cable tied shrink wrapped dealie, this black and this red wire are from the ESC, and these are wired in what we call parallel. Parallel is probably a safer bet than running them in series, and you will find it's a safer bet and probably a more efficient. You probably get slightly more torque and certainly better runtime wiring your motors in parallel than series. You want outright power, wire them in series. As I've already mentioned, I don't want outright power, I just want it to be reliable. These are sort of spliced together. So what I've done is I cut a section of the wire insulation away. Then we solder it. We put a bit of flux on there and just fill it with solder. And then we've just joined these two wires. So this is actually green. It looks blue on the camera. It's green and yellow to match these Tamiya wires. And then they join up here. They've had to be lengthened, so I've had to take a section of green and yellow and join them here. And we've got the positive, the black, red, yellow is always positive, the red wire, the red sheathing, and then underneath there's the black for the green. They come out of this small gap at the front and they power the front motor. So they're wired in parallel. So you can buy T connectors, and I've seen other people do T connectors to join two motors. I've also made a Typhoon hovercraft which has twin motors running off a single ESC. Same setup. I ran them in parallel and they run absolutely great. Loads of power, loads of efficiency, good. That's it. So that goes in there. Wires to the front, wires out the back. There's a small gap here. This cover goes back on and covers the lot, so you can't see them. All you will see is these wires here, which you would have seen anyway, and these wires here, which connect to the front gearbox when that's reattached onto this bulkhead here. The other thing we've done, and this took a lot more work actually than you probably realise, is we've got a matching Acom servo down there. This is a good old AS11 servo. Again, it's period, so it's period correct. That's been fitted in there, and that is nice and tight in there, as you can see. That took some modification, and I will take the bottom half off and show you what I've done, because that took a bit of work to fit in there, because it's a lot smaller than the standard servo that comes in these. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong with the standard servo. The downside with it is it has 5 wires going from it onto the control board, which is a bit fiddly trying to connect them up to this, whereas actually if I just put a normal servo in, we can just plug it into this receiver without problem, and that's what I wanted. And it's probably a bit quicker and a bit more high performance. But we've managed to use the standard Acoms. That's the black bit. Acoms, I don't know how you say it. That's this black bit here. That's just servo horn, as it were. So that fits onto the onto this servo. It's the correct one for this servo. So it's an Acoms one. And then this is actually the servo saver off the Dictator. So that does actually fit together with no modification. The only thing I've had to change is the screw we used to secure it. And these are the standard steering arm, sort of control rods, tie rods, whatever you want to call them, for the Dictator. Again, if I was being over the top, I would fit adjustable so we can adjust the toe angle of the front wheels. Not needed. Just don't want to do it. I want the car to look standard. Let's have a look at how I fit the servo, because it did take a bit of work to get that in there. And then we'll take this gearbox apart and I'll show you what I've done with the suspension and bits and pieces. But that's the electronics. If anyone's got any questions, please do let me know. I'd be happy to help out. And then the on-off switch from this ESC does actually fit perfectly in the slot, and you can still switch it on from the standard position. It fits perfectly in there, so that was great. No modification needed. I just need to tidy the wires up a bit. If I was being lazy, I'd leave it. But I am a bit obsessed about like tidy wires, so I will tidy these up so they look a bit neater in there. Annoying, I don't know why I'm doing that, because no one's ever going to see it. And the other thing we'll go over, when we take this gearbox apart at the front, I'll show you the pinion I've used and how that fits, okay? Because a lot of people ask about pinions. They are confusing, pinions, and they are difficult. It took a bit of work to find the right ones for this, because they're an unusual size, and they're quite long, which is unusual for one of these cars, so you need to find the right ones. If anyone wants the same pinions, I'm happy to share a link where I bought them. Again, I'm not affiliated with the people I bought it. I just spent a long time finding the right ones and then just bought them. They weren't expensive. They were about £5 each on eBay, I think it was. And the 2 motors, of course, I bought as well. So not expensive to convert this. And if you wanted to put a modern running gear in it, go nuts. It will all fit in there, no problems. But let's have a look at this servo next, and then we'll do the gearbox. Okay, back to shaky hand mode. Cover removed, and it's just 4 8x3 screws holding this on. The cover sits on like this, okay, and it sits under the car, under this battery tray, and in front of this battery tray. Now, this is, you take the cover off, and normally in here you'd find a servo, and it is an unusual size servo. It's a bit longer than all the other ones, which I have a casing for here actually in my little parts bin. Have I got the casing? Yes, here's the casing for the original, and it is quite a bit longer. I will show you on the camera in a minute, sorry, fiddling around. It is quite a bit longer than a standard servo. I say quite a bit, it's about 7mm longer from memory. And it's obviously got no mounting brackets on it. Normally they have screwed brackets on the side. So that meant that to fit this one, we had to make it the same shape. I had to make it the same shape as this one, okay? And that meant, first thing I did was to grind off the tabs that hold this on. So in a Tamiya car or Kaioshin or any other hobby grade car, they have screwed tabs, okay, which sit in here, and you screw them into your chassis and it holds the servo nice and tight. Now I had to take them off so it would fit. Next problem I encountered was this angled piece here. Meant that it didn't really want to sit flush up against this. If you look, there's a tiny section here with a little cutaway, and that I'm going to make the light better, hang on. Right, that's much better. Now you can see that angle piece and this little FRP bracket that is literally, I've just slid that in there, and that sort of bronzy coloured piece, it's a piece of fibre reinforced plastic, and that just takes up, this servo is ever so slightly narrower than the other one, it slides into that slot there, and that just holds that servo in position. I'm sure you could work out a different way, but that just works perfectly to hold that in position nice and tight, so there's no lateral play in that servo now. Now the next thing I had to do was make it just that bit longer, and from memory I think it was about 7mm. And at the back here where you can see those red, white and black wires going through either side, that is actually a section of old servo body that I cut up. I had an old dead servo. You could use anything you want, it's just to make that servo a bit longer, and it just wedges in there. It doesn't actually connect to the servo, it just holds the servo in place, and it works really well. And then to allow the wires to flow through into the chassis, because there's a hole cut in the chassis for them, they come out this side of the servo, as you can see, from that rubber bit just behind the screw hole there. I needed then to just flow through this empty piece of plastic. So as you can see, I've just cut a notch out of that just to allow the wires to flow through without snagging on anything. And then this sticky white piece on top is just a piece of foam, mounting foam, two lots of it actually stuck together. That again just stops any vibration or rocking around in there, because actually the servo is just held in place by this casing, so it doesn't actually have any screws holding it in place, so it needs to be nice and snug in there and aligned. So that's how I've done it. Again, if you're making one of these and you want help with this, you want the measurements, or you need a hand with anything, please give me a shout. I'm always happy to help people if they are, you know, if you're new to this model. And let me tell you, the only way you learn about this stuff is by asking people, so don't feel afraid to ask people. I know out there can be some real assholes who will tell you that you're stupid or you should be able to work that out for yourself. It's absolute bollocks, you know. Ask people, it's how you learn. There's no such thing as a stupid question, especially when it comes to these cars. I've learned the hard way a lot of times, but then a lot of the time when I used to race cars and stuff, I learned a lot by surrounding myself with people who were very helpful at helping me set my cars up, and I learned a lot from those people. So do feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help people and try. You know, I don't have all the answers. That's the other thing I should note. I don't have all the answers, so I will try and help people where possible, but don't see me as some sort of oracle on these things. I've just got quite a bit of experience of making them, and I do things my own way. But if I'm happy to share my ideas with people. It really isn't a problem. In fact, actually, with this, the initial attempt was to try and fit the innards of this servo into this casing to make it really factory fresh, and yeah, that didn't work. It would have been too much fabrication. Right, so I'm just trying to do this on camera. I'm going to park you guys back on my tripod, and then we'll start having a look at that gearbox. I'm just going to screw this back together before I lose any of the bits. So that's going to be the next thing. We'll look at the gearbox. But that's the servo. Like I said, if you want to ask questions, go right ahead. I'm happy to help. Okay, let's have a look at this gearbox. Sorry about the lighting. I don't have very good lighting in my workspace here. So this is the front assembly. So we have these steering arms, steering hubs, etc. Again, it's all in lovely condition. The first thing we should probably remove is these shocks. These are unusual. These are just friction. They're not even friction dampers. They're just sprung shocks. This is where you find that this car has actually been done on a budget. You know, this is where stuff like this. This is where they save the money. They have ball joints on them, which is nice. They're a bit stiff, but we can do something with that. And then it is very basic. It's just a spring and then this casing, which the shock runs into. And if you can see that, so something could be done with that. These just press in. These are just little studs that they clip to. Now again, you could buy. I was initially thinking of buying some shocks for this, some more oil-filled dampers, and then I thought, you know what, it's so lovely and original, I don't really see the point. And again, I don't know if it's really necessary. I don't really think I'm going to be using the car a great deal, so you know, is it worth it? So that's them removed. The next thing I would probably do is take these suspension arms off. These press out. You can pull these out, but seeing as I'm not going to bother changing the shocks, I won't bother. I can show you how to do it if you want. My advice is you wrap some tape around them so you don't scratch them. This is just masking tape. Wrap some thin masking tape or any sort of electrical tape or whatever, and then get some very thin pliers on there and just ease them out, okay? Don't be brutal with them. You might even be able to pull them out with your fingers if they're loose. Next up, we're going to take these suspension arm pins out. These are very common to cars like Tamiya's. These are very common for cracking plastic, okay? These stress plastic massively, these things. If you're going for outright performance on one of these, my advice is replace these with some steel shafts with what we call E-clips on the end. A bit like these we find on this, let's just put that dry shaft out, on the end of this hub here. That's an E-clip holding that that in place there. And then that takes a lot of the stress out of the plastic and actually allows the suspension to perform a lot better. One at the top, one at the bottom. I'd always advise that you don't over tighten these, and I would always advise that you lubricate them, because these wear out and they wear your suspension arms out, and then they get very baggy and loose and you get lots of play in the suspension. These are in fantastic condition. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera. There's barely any wear at all on them. They are literally like brand new. This car really can't have been used very much. I'm going to pop this one out and we're going to free the front hub and this knuckle, this steering knuckle, because it's all just dusty. There's no wear on it, it's just dusty. We've got this top arm here, double wishbones. They have this top suspension arm, which is quite cool actually. Again, on the more expensive hobby grade cars, you know, if you look at that Terra Scorcher we had up here, these would all be adjustable on those to allow you to set the camber angles and the steering angles and what have you. This needs ball racing. I haven't got any bearings on order. I've run out. I've done so many projects recently, I've run out of stock of my standard issue bearings. Now, let me explain bearings to you. Ball racing a car used to be an expensive business back in the day. Back when I used to race, a set of bearings could cost you upwards of 40 quid. These days you can buy them for pennies almost. They won't be amazing quality, but I mean, this isn't an amazing performance car. If you're making a high-end or a very fast car, you would probably want some higher quality ones, but I tend to buy fairly cheap ones for stuff like this, and I have got a load on order. Now, the standard size of bearings is called 1150. I say standard size. It's not a standard size, it's a common size for this type of car. So 1/10 scale use what we call 1150 size bearings, and I'll explain that in a moment once I pop one of these plastic ones out. Now, these E-clips are brilliant for flicking across the room. I bet you all pinged one across the room at some point. I'm going to try and take this one out without doing that, so just get your fingers to stop it from pinging away, so you catch it with your finger. You can buy special pliers for that if you can be bothered. I can't, because I've sort of worked the technique of taking them out. Pop your dry shaft cup out, and again, just look how clean it is. It's never been run, this car. It's in beautiful, beautiful condition. Take that over there, and these white bits that popped out, just pop this one out. These white things are the bearings. These are actually plastic bushes. Now, 1150, let me explain bearing sizes to you. It's all about the size of the bearing, and I'll show you how it works with my calipers. The 11 on 1150 is the diameter of the bearing. Okay, so 10.87 on my probably, oh, I didn't show you that. 10.89 on my probably a bit incorrect calipers. It's 11 millimeters. Okay, so that's the 11 in the 1150 is the millimeters. Okay, and the 50 is the inner diameter of the bearing. Okay, so I've popped it, that's the inner diameter, so that's the thickness of your axle on here. Okay, so that's 5 millimeters, and that's where your 50, so it's 11 by 50, so it's 11 millimeters by 5 millimeters. And actually, when you buy these, it'll be 11 by 5 by 4, and the 4 is the thickness. Okay, so there's the bearings explained to you. So if you ever need to know what size of bearing you need to buy, get your bearing, measure the diameter like that, measure the inner diameter using the other part of your calipers like that, 5 mil, and then measure the thickness, and that's important. Don't get the thickness wrong, because bearings come in all different thicknesses. 4 mil, so it's 11 by 5 on the inside by 4 thick, so that's 11 by 5 by 4, or 1150 is the sort of standard terminology for those bearings. And you'll find 1150 bearings, if you've got a stock of those, they're very useful because they go in a lot of models. And this one, this Dictator, if you're doing one of these, all 1150s, all the bearings are 1150s. So let's pop this off. He says flicking all the bits everywhere. Drive shaft's already removed itself because I've undone the top one. And we'll just slide those out, dismantle that, and then we'll get onto the gearbox. I'm just going to take the suspension shock tower off, as we'd call them, or suspension mounts. One, what was that, 12 mil screw,
one 12mm screw holding that on. Amazing. Good design that, actually. Okay, so there's the gearbox. We'll come back to that. Let's just finish dismantling these. And let's just make sure my camera is set up so you can see everything. Just put it all apart. Now, as I said earlier, if you're a bit new to this, or you haven't got the instruction manual, take pictures. I've actually recently restored a car, Kyosho, I don't know what it's called, Spider or something. I don't really know what it was. It came in a job lot of cars I bought. I've been restoring it, and it's a touring car, and I don't really work with Kyoshos much. I don't have a lot of experience with them. They are nice cars, actually. So I didn't really know where anything went or how it went together, and I had to meticulously document and take pictures and make note of all the screw sizes, because when you come to put them back and you don't know what size screw to put in there, you are, to excuse the pun, screwed, because you won't know where the screws go, and you don't want to put a screw that's too long for a hole in that hole, because you will damage it. Let's just pop this clip off. Oh, I don't want to come off. There we go, that's off. Pop that out, knock the bearing out. They actually don't need my tool for them, they just fall out because they're pretty cheapo. And that's how you dismantle it. Let's have a look at this gearbox. Really straightforward, these gearboxes, actually. They do look like a bit of a copy of a Tamiya Thundershot type gearbox, and they put the four-wheel drive badge on, which the Tamiya ones had as well. I do see a lot of Tamiya similarities in this car. They were obviously gunning for Tamiya with this particular design. Now, I can't actually get my screwdriver in there. Look. Oh, I can just. If I can't, I would use a slightly smaller one, but you do have to be careful not to just, because of the screw heads, it won't round that off and cause problems. Or you could use a flat head on there if they're not too tight. But actually, that wasn't a problem after all that. After all said and done, there's just one more at the top there. Now, let's pop this gearbox out, and I can show you what incredible condition these are in. They just separate in half, so pull it apart gently, and there's your gearbox. And there's the original 40-year-old grease in there, which actually, when I did the rear one, is still in amazing condition. It's still really slippery stuff. It's good quality grease, that. Now, I can't rebuild this gearbox because I haven't got any bearings. I'm waiting for them to come. But I thought I'd just show you what I do. Now, I'm going to clean these gears off, and I'm just going to put a very light coating of lithium or ceramic grease on there. Ceramic grease is quite good. You can buy it in most bike shops. Lithium grease, the same sort of thing, really. Sort of like a white grease. Don't put Vaseline on them. Not good for them. And actually, they really don't need a lot of grease. This is grease overkill on these. You don't need a lot of grease on nylon gears like this. They just need a thin layer, especially the spur gear, which is this one here, that takes a drive from the metal pinion. Okay, if you've got an aluminium pinion on the car, throw it in the bin. Just get rid of them, get a steel one. And let's have a look at the pinion. Let's talk about that now, because I can show you that with this gearbox connected. Let me show you the pinion. Now, hopefully my camera won't die because my battery's running out on my camera. This is the pinion I bought, okay? Now, these are tricky, okay? And a lot of people have asked questions. Excuse that one, that's not the right one. That's a 10 tooth pinion, which we don't want. Now, this is the standard pinion. They press on to the 380 motor. This is the motor mount that it comes with. I'm not going to free it actually, because I want to show you. Now, these ones press on. I could just press those back on and use the standard motors. There's nothing really wrong with them, but they are slipping. There's no grub screw on these, interestingly. They are press fit, which is, again, unusual. I don't think they're ever supposed to come off there. They're supposed to just be attached. For whatever reason, they've come off. Age, probably. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm going to take these off. This one has this interesting, this sort of protective plate on it. I haven't put that on the back one, but never mind. It's not going to get dirty. I'm going to use my smaller screwdriver for these, because these are very clearly a smaller size screw. So I'm just going to undo those. This is my PH1x75. And JIS, of course. So let's set that motor out, and that's how you take the motor out, and then we're going to pop the 380 Sports Tune when it arrives in there. Now, the pinion, the 380 Sports Tune, this is I think this is it a 2mm shaft on these? Has the same size shaft as this. This is exactly the same motor, it's just not sports tuned. Let's just measure this shaft. I think it's 2mm, 2.3, 2.2, so roughly 2mm, isn't it? 2.5mm, 2.25mm, that unusual size. Anyway, the pinions I bought are like this. They're long, and they are what's called a 32 dp or 0.8 module. Now, in English, that means it's the style of the tooth, okay, and the gaps between the teeth, okay. And that's, you need to know which one it is to allow your gears to mesh. Now this, I think, is a 0.8 module. That's metric. That's a metric measurement, and there's a way of working out your module or your DP. There's calculators online. Now, if you look at these, this is a 32 dp because that's all I could find, and this is a 0.8 module. They are very slightly different. I don't know if that shows up on the camera, but they have a very slightly different tooth arrangement, okay? Doesn't matter on RC cars, despite what anyone tells you. On these sorts of cars, it really doesn't matter, and that actually rolls beautifully on that. And as long as it's positioned correctly, not too notchy. These are a bit notchy, actually. They're a bit cheapo, these. They're not very well made. But they'll be fine. Now, that comes with a very wide diameter inner recess there for the motor shaft to go on. This one's much smaller. They do, thankfully, with these ones, give you this sleeve, and that aligns with the pinion hole. So that goes in there, like so. And then you also actually need this adapter sleeve that comes with the 380 sports tuned motor. Now, if you're going to put new pinions on your standard motors, you won't have this, so you need to try and source this. I don't know what you'd do with that, or you'd have to find a pinion with a smaller diameter hole in the middle. It works on this. I don't know, I mean, using these adapters that came with a Tamiya motor, but of course that is not going to sit central on the standard motor, so you'd have to find another adapter. They are available, you just got to go out and find them. Can't help with that as such. Then obviously you put that on there, you put that back in there, and then you sit this in here, and then you sit that in there, and you just make sure that that meshes with that spur gear. So that wants to be sat on there like that, and it wants to spin smoothly, okay? And this is about as smooth as I can get it. Okay, I'm going to try these out, and I'm hoping they're going to be alright, because I could not find the right size 0.8 module like this. It's a very unusual pinion. That I've never seen one like it. This is a 0.8 module because this is a Tamiya pinion. It's actually a Carson pinion, but it's made for Tamiya. The crucial thing you want with these really is a steel pinion. See, and that meshes much nicer with that gear. So this is slightly wrong, but good enough. That's what I do. Putting it back together is reverse. Obviously, if you want to change the bearings, you just pull the gears apart, give them a good clean up, stick the bearings on, a little bit of grease. Don't go nuts with the grease. Please don't put loads of grease in them, they don't need it. And the other thing I've done is rebuilt the diff, so I will rebuild this diff. That probably doesn't really need it. And then put it all back together. And that's the build so far. I will do a video when it's back together, and I'll do a running video. If you have any questions, then please do get in touch. I hope that helps for the people who've asked. I hope it gives you an insight, and I will make, like I say, when I've tidied all these bits up, I will post another video with it all together so you can see it all together. But like I said, you're very welcome to ask questions. And yeah, great car. I really love this car. I really love it. I cannot wait to get it together and have a go. I have got to wait because I've got to wait for the other motor to turn up, and I'm not going to fit the pin into the standard motor because then I'll get an imbalance between the two motors and it won't run right. And if you are planning to do one of these, then they are great. They're great cars, actually. Really cool and really different. It's just nice to work on something that is trying to be a hobby grade but isn't quite. I just think that's quite cool and interesting. I hope that video wasn't too boring, like I said. If you do like it, give me a thumbs up and whatever, like it, just give me comments and what have you. I don't really use my RC channel much these days because I've got so many other things going on. But if you like it, let me know and I'll try and do some more. because I have got hundreds of cars that need restoring, all sat waiting. And I always get distracted with a new exciting model such as this one. But there we go. I hope that helped. Like I said, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next part of the video when we've got all this back together.